Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Great Debate. I am your host, Naomi Johnson, and tonight's debate centers around the topic of the oh-so-famous Shakespeare. As I'm sure you're aware, William Shakespeare is one of the most famous, if not the most famous, English poet and playwright, providing 37 plays to the public throughout the late 14th and early 15th centuries. Unfortunately, due to the developments and progressions of modern English, a lot of the phrases, words, and meanings of Shakespeare are often misunderstood or not understood at all. Thankfully, literarians exist, and there are certain people who have been able to provide translations in order to provide newcomers or those who are not familiar with heightened text a tool with which to understand. However, some might take the stance that Shakespeare is better left untranslated, as a way to prohibit the dilution of Shakespeare's original text, and that the richness of his text remains what it once was, rather than transforming it into something different. In this debate, we will be discussing what is gained and lost through translation, and if it is better to study and use the original text of Shakespeare's work, or if it is better to translate this text. I will now call up our two debaters, who will give their own introductions, and then we will move into the opening statements. First up is Merlinda Akindelli.
Woo! Hi, I'm Merlinda Akindelli, and I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I've always loved Shakespeare. He's like such a king in my eyes, and like the words he uses shouldn't be translated, in my opinion, because I think it's a travesty on the part of a reader, you know? So in this debate, I will be arguing against the translation of Shakespeare.
Thank you, Merlinda. Next up is Jenny Maiden.
Hello, my name is Genevieve Maiden. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I believe that Shakespeare should be translated because it is the best way of living, because it makes more sense. Why make life harder? It already is hard. So that's why I will be arguing for the translation of Shakespeare.
All right, thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Merlinda. I will now reinstate the motion in which we are arguing for and against. With the rise of new translations and adaptations consistently coming out in recent years, especially within film and theater, is it better to translate Shakespeare for the 21st century or leave the original text the way it is without translation and provide maybe other ways to enhance or tweak the play in a way that is not translating? Let us now begin with our opening statements. We will start with Merlinda, who is arguing against translation.
Some things are truly lost in translation. Translating the text inherently leads to the loss of the intricacies of the original language, as well as the loss of the specific and deliberate rhymes, rhythms, and meters of the text. It also can muddle and take away the original source material. That is why I am arguing against translation of Shakespeare. Because in the stricter sense, translating Shakespeare is no longer Shakespeare.
Thank you, Merlinda. Up next is Jenny, who is arguing for translation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Naomi. We all know that Shakespeare is almost impossible to comprehend given the modern English language that we speak and read today compared to the archaic text that is Shakespeare, which is now why translation is necessary in order to understand what he is saying or talking about in his plays. Translation can also offer accessibility, highlight subtext, and give different insight to original text. That is why I am arguing for translation to bring a new light on outdated work.
Thank you both. Now, seeing as I am the judge and chairperson in this debate, I will be asking questions to the both of you, and you will respond in the order that we have been doing so far. But before we get to those questions, I would ask you to provide your primary arguments. Let's start with Merlinda, who is arguing against translation.
Yes. As mentioned before, Shakespeare's language is intricate and intentional. When we translate his original words to something watered down, we lose the author's intention, which in every case should always be honored. For example, let's look at Romeo and Juliet, Act 2, Scene 2. Romeo says to Juliet, "But soft with light through yonder window breaks. It is the east and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick and pale with grief." Do I need to read any more? We can see that the translated text in layman's terms simply does not hit the same. Furthermore, might I ask what the purpose is of force-feeding people a version of Diet's Shakespeare? To do so is to insult the audience, assuming that they are not capable of understanding what is happening in the play without having Shakespeare's lexicons at their sides. Why take away the game that comes with Shakespeare, figuring out how his older texts exist in a new context? Additionally, the major objective of the actor on stage is to translate the words that they have been given through their body language and gestures. Might I provide the judges and audience a physical example?
I don't see why not.
Thank you. Now, if I were to do Portia's monologue from Julius Caesar, but without any embellishments or gestures, this is what it would look like. "You ungently, Brutus, stole from my bed, and yesterday at supper you suddenly arose, musing and sighing with your arms across." While that might seem amazing, it lacks in the gestures and embellishments that help the audience understand the text as best as possible. I will do it again, this time fully acting, and I will hope you see the difference. "You ungently, Brutus, stole from my bed, and yesterday night at supper you suddenly rose, musing and sighing with your arms across." In conclusion, these easy, no-fear versions of Shakespeare simply do not do justice to the original text. That is all.
Next is Jenny with her primary argument.
Thank you. Translation is a necessary part of understanding Shakespeare. As I said in my opening statements, the language that was used during the 14th and 15th centuries is archaic compared to the modern English that we use today. Different expressions and turns of phrase that were used then are lost or have changed meaning today. For example, may I pose a question to the audience?
Oh, yes, please.
Thank you. Audience member, if I were to say you had lily liver, what would you think?
I think it...
Of course you would. I mean, wouldn't we all? Would you like to know what that actually meant during that time?
I guess...
It means that you were a coward and you have no blood in your liver. So, you see, the words then not only might mean something different now, but they also might have different connotations, as well as unusual syntax that might bring confusion to the reader or viewer. With translations, untrained, so to say, viewers are able to not only understand but enjoy the heightened text, since some of his text is practically incomprehensible. Additionally, if one were to want to view or read a Shakespearean play, having to go back and forth between notes and footnotes can only become a strain and take you out of the show, which is why providing translated material can help a viewer understand the main through line and story of the show without needing a study or the hours beforehand. Lastly, Shakespeare is adaptable like putty. When you bring new eyes to Shakespeare, you bring a new context of text, which can inform and produce new understandings of the show. In this way, we each provide our own translations by making our own meanings of the show, although you might be able to reference back to dictionary or lexicon. There is something special that is created when you build your own relationship with the text. Thank you.
Okay.
Can you tell her to stop looking at me?
Thank you both. Now is my favorite section of the show. I will ask you a question that you both can answer to, one first, then the other. That, however, is where the civilities end. I want to see your passion for each of your stanzas, ladies. So once you both have spoken, you'll be able to argue and rebuttal against each other and see if you can find the flaws within one another's answers. If things get too rowdy, I will call for a halt, but let's be honest, the rowdiness is the best part. Are you ready?
I was born for this.
Well, I was born before you, so.
I'm ready! Yeah! Get it, girl. All right, ladies. Question number 1. The late Paula Blank, who was a professor of English at the College of William and Mary, said that each viewer, each generation brings a new understanding to the plays, which is as it should be. Do you agree with this statement? How does this play into your argument? Jenny.
I absolutely agree with this. This is how we are able to create new translations and adaptations. Keeping Shakespeare's untranslated prohibits new understanding from coming about.
Not if you actually do the research to understand the text. I don't know if you've ever done work before, but these are my pride and joy. Yeah. They're the key to knowing all you need to know so that there is no room for creating shows out of the original.
Doesn't it get a little heavy, carrying around those little books big books actually, big books all the time, your little backpacks, your little rehearsals, your little plays, huh?
Well, actually, you do the work before, so you don't bring them to rehearsal, and there's an online version so that, like, once you keep reading it, you'll know them in your big old brain, but I know your brain isn't that big, so.
Okay, I don't really have to do that if I can just look up No Fear Shakespeare and just know it automatically.
Well, actually, it costs money now, so I just know as a
it costs money now,
struggling
you know why? Because of your generation.
We're part of the same generation. I'm actually older than you, you idiot.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much. All right, ladies, next question. Is there true harm in translation? If so, where? If not, why not? Merlinda, yes, you buzzed.
Of course there is harm. Are you familiar with the phrase, to die or to live? No. What you know is to be or not to be. That is the question. When you translate the text, you lose the poetry. You lose the iconic and descriptive text that is inherently Shakespeare. And discovering what the meaning of the play is a part of the experience. And without that, you simply do not have Shakespeare. Also, this takes away from the actors' jobs, which is through acting to provide an understanding about what the audience may or may not know.
It is the exact opposite. It is only helpful to provide translations. Why keep Shakespeare's elitist to where only a select few may understand it? New readers should be encouraged to not only read translations already created to help them understand the bare minimum of what's going on in the play, but why they should also take liberties to create their own translations and interpretations of the show.
If you simply read the plot summary and let the words wash over you like the rain on a warm summer night.
It's so weird.
Then there should be no need for any of that extra mess. You can enjoy the production as it is with no translation. Also, it is very important to watch and take in media that you don't understand. Do you go to the museum only after looking up every picture in it? No!
That actually proves my point. If you don't understand Shakespeare, then you should come up with your own interpretations and find personal relationship with the text. It will still be meaningful and beautiful nonetheless.
Oh, well, it actually looks like our debaters might have found some common ground.
Aww, that's so cute. I actually didn't find that.
Well, unfortunately, our time is running out with one another, so I'll leave the audience with some questions to ponder to make their own decisions. Does Shakespeare get lost in translation through modern adaptations, or does it provide a more accessible and understandable way to understand his older, outdated work? Are adaptations and translations allowing for plays to be intrinsically changed and or watered down? Let us know what you think by reaching out to us through our hotline, our podcast, YouTube comments, Instagram DMs, Facebook private messages, edible arrangements notes, or mail. Thank you for tuning in to this week's Great Debate, and I hope to see you next time.